call, please.
Senate roll call for Tuesday, February 2nd, 2021. Anderson, absent. Baldwin.
Here.
Beitman, excused. Boner.
Here.
Bouchard.
Anthony.
Here.
Case.
Present.
Cooper.
Here.
Driscoll.
Here.
Ellis.
Present.
French.
Here.
Furphy.
Here.
Guru.
Here.
Hicks.
Here.
Hutchings. James.
Here.
Kinski.
Here.
Cole.
Here.
Cost.
Here.
Landon.
Here.
McCune.
Here.
Nethercott.
Here.
Pappas.
Here.
Perkins.
Here.
Rothfuss.
Here.
Salazar.
Here.
Schuler.
Here.
Scott.
Here.
Steinmetz. Wasserberger.
Here.
And President Dockstader.
Here.
27 present, one excused, and 28 present, one excused, one absent.
Thank you. Former Representative Nathan Winters and Pastor, welcome to the Senate today. Glad to have you. Good to see you back. And then we'll have the prayer now by Nathan Winters, Pastor Nathan Winters, followed by the pledge, which we will have Senator Hutchings lead us in after we're done with the prayer.
Let's pray. It's a pleasure to be with you all. Our Father, I thank you for the call that you have placed upon our lives. Like the Apostle Paul, Lord, we thank you for strengthening us, because you've counted us faithful and you've put us in your service. And today you've given us the opportunity to truly live out the great commandment to love you with all of our heart, soul, and mind, and then also to love our neighbor as ourselves. But the Lord, to do this, we need your wisdom. We need your help in taking what we know and then using it with skill to perform the task that you have placed into our hands. And Lord, taking up what you've said in 1 Timothy, which tells us that our prayers and petitions and thanksgiving should be made on behalf of all men, for kings and all who are in authority, so that we can live tranquil and quiet lives with godliness and dignity. And knowing that that is acceptable in your sight, Lord, we pray for your direction. And because your word says that when the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice, we ask today, Lord, that righteous decisions would be made so that the state of Wyoming might rejoice in you. Lord, I pray for our governor, for our Secretary of State, our auditor, our treasurer, our superintendent of public instruction, for our Supreme Court, and for these men and women of the Senate, and for those of the House of Representatives. Lord, I do pray that you would be with those who are sick and not with us today. I pray for Senator Beitman, that you would return him well and safe. Guide everyone today serving you across the state, across the nation, and of course overseas as well, Lord, that today your goodness would shine through your children, so that those who do not know you would see you through us. We pray all of this in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Senator.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, born and unborn.
Thank you. Just before we proceed, a little bit of privilege. Pastor Winters, bring us up to date on your family and what you're doing.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. We are doing very well. We live here in Cheyenne, Wyoming now. And although I've had the opportunity to make it to almost every one of your districts at some point in this last year, it has been a joy to get to know the state even better, but also in a little different way to have the privilege of serving you all. And so it's been a pleasure to be with you and to see a lot of faces I've spent quite a bit of time just getting to know. And know this, that I pray for you very regularly. And I also pray for, and I know a lot of other people that pray for you very, very regularly as well. So thank you again for the privilege of being with you.
Thank you, Pastor. Appreciate you joining us today. Good to see you again. All the best to your family. All right, reading, correction, approval of the journal. Will the chief clerk please read the journal committee report?
Mr. President, your journal committee reports at the journal of February 1st, 2021 has been read and recommends that it be approved. Signed, John Cole, Chairman.
Thank you. Any objections? There being none, report is adopted. Messages from the House. Madam Chief Clerk.
February 1st, 2021, message number 9. Mr. President, this is to inform you that the House of Representatives has amended the temporary House rules and the joint rules of the 66th Wyoming State Legislature General Session with the following amendments. JR 002, dispensing with further reading. Sincerely, Wendy Harding, House Chief Clerk.
Thank you. Reports from standing committees.
February 1st, 2021, Mr. President, your committee number 2 appropriations, to whom was referred House Bill 9 engrossed, short time compensation program, respectfully report same back to the Senate with the recommendation that it do pass. Voting aye, Senators Guru, Hicks, Perkins, and Steinmetz. Senator Kinski excused. Signed, Drew Perkins, Chairman. Mr. President, your committee number 8, Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs, to whom was referred House Bill 18, Military Training Memorials, respectfully report same back to the Senate with the recommendation that it do pass. Voting aye, Senators Furphy, Landon, McCune, and Pappas. Senator Anderson absent. Signed, William Landon, Chairman. Mr. President, your committee number 8, Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs, to whom was referred House Joint Resolution 1, Traumatic Brain Injury and Post-Traumatic Stress Treatments, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with the recommendation that it do pass. Voting aye, Senators Furphy, Landon, McCune, Pappas. Senator Anderson absent. Signed, William Landon, Chairman. Mr. President, your committee number 8, Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs, to whom was referred House Bill 25, Tribal Vehicle Registration Exemption Implementation, respectfully report same back to the Senate with the recommendation that it do pass. Voting aye, Senators Furphy, Landon, McCune, Pappas. Senator Anderson absent. Signed, William Landon, Chairman. Mr. President, your committee number 6, Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resources, to whom was referred House Bill 66 engrossed, 2021 large project funding, respectfully report same back to the Senate with the recommendation that it do pass. Voting aye, Senators Ellis, Guru, Landon, Salazar, and Schuler. Signed, Affy Ellis, Chairman.
Thank you. Bills on second reading. Members of the Senate, we have 3. I'll just note for you, just because we're remote, in some cases, House Bill 3, 6, 8, 34, 42, 48, 8 has an amendment. Bills on second reading.
Mr. President.
Senator Boner.
Mr. President, may I have privilege of the floor?
Please do. Oh,
Okay,
excellent.
ladies and gentlemen, one thing I miss about being in person is the opportunity to introduce special guests. And
You have someone in your gallery.
Yeah, in our gallery down here. So I just want to say hi. That's my daughter, Therese, my wife, Nicole. So yeah, I do modified privilege here. Just want to say hi and look forward to seeing you all in March.
That's an excellent privilege. Thank you, Senator. All the best to your family. Very good. We like those kind of privileges. Very good.
President?
Yes, who said? There you go, Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. President. I pulled up the daily calendar today and it just has the second reading bills up. I was curious when, for the public's notification and ours, when we might have the list of committee of the whole bills presented on online.
Mr. Floor Leader, would you step in and answer that question? Majority Floor Leader Driscoll.
Yes, Mr. President. I'm not sure they were all submitted last night and haven't been posted. I emailed everybody on the committee the list as well as Ellen's. Chief Clerk may know. I noticed they were not up, but they were sent out.
All right.
But
We
I
may
can
have
read them
we may
again.
have an answer from Senator Landon if we could go up there. Senator Landon.
Mr. President, thank you. I was able to call up the Senate Committee of the Whole floor session. It's the #1 meeting underneath legislative meetings on the website. The first one listed, and then right under it, you can go to the House and Senate floor sessions. So that's where you can find it, is under legislative meetings.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for helping us navigate that. Appreciate it. Vice President Hicks, you were also questioning? No, okay. Chairman Ellis, did you have a follow-up?
I apologize, just for the clarification. I see the second reading bills on the website, but I don't see the committee of the whole bills. I believe someone in the gallery that's in the Senate chambers had a list, or there was some bills listed on the whiteboard, and I was just wondering if maybe even right now, if we could go through.
Chief Clerk, I saw you with your hand.
It is immediately above the Senate floor session calendar on the meeting schedule page. And it was also emailed out. I hope all of you received it this morning.
Thank you. Sorry, Mr. President, I see that now. My apologies.
Members of the Senate, we tracking
President,
it? Yes, Senator Kinski.
could Ellen repeat one more time where it is?
One more time, Madam Chief Clerk.
If you're navigating to the home page, if you go to legislative meetings, today's session, the very first thing at the top says Senate Cal floor session.
Oh.
If you click on details, that is where the tentative Cal is.
Gotcha.
And the reason, members, that we are unable to print that on the calendar is because when the calendar is printed, all of those bills are in committee. So technically there is no general file for them to print out. So we're having to do a second calendar to notify everyone of the committee of the whole. And it was available to the public last evening as well. It was available, it's been available all day. And then I emailed all of you with the instructions about where to find it, as well as a PDF of the tentative Cal for today.
Thank you. Chairman Ethercott.
Mr. President, for further reinforcement, our good LSO staff, Mr. Anthony Serra, also emailed a link to that found in your chat on the bottom of your screen page.
Oh, okay. Senator Case, Chairman Case.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, I greatly appreciate the work of the majority floor leader and the leadership last night to try to put together what we're calling a tentative general file list. And I think it's a very good addition and a good way to handle this uncertainty of this Zoom session. But I want to come back to one point with regard to the public participation. We put stuff on the website, but the public doesn't know how to find the stuff on the website, Mr. Chairman. I think our members barely can find this, for example, second reading today, or, we're barely holding in there ourselves. And I can't imagine what it's like for a member of the public who wants to follow a particular bill and really maybe is seeing it for the first time or what have you, to try to navigate their way through this. So I keep coming back to, if we could figure out ways to let the public know in a manner that's kind of equivalent to when we're in person, the virtual equivalents of, that would go a long ways. So somehow, I think when they come to the website, they need to really it has to be there. They don't have to dig into a calendar. They don't have to, there's just got to be a better way, because I think this is too hard.
And appreciate that, Chairman Case, and that's one of the reasons you'll hear me repeat things a little more verbally for those who are listening and watching, as I did this morning with second readings, just so that people know where we're at. And it's always good to do that in the process because you have a big audience out there across the state. Further comments, Senator Grew.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I privilege to the floor?
Please do.
While everybody's finding their lists and the public is navigating through the website, I just wanted to take a second. 33 years ago, first time I hoodwinked the voters of Teton County into voting for me for something. It was the city council. And I was incredibly fortunate to get appointed to the Wyoming Association of Municipality Board of Directors. And I serve with a group of people who became friends and mentors to me. People like some names that some of you know, Jerry Wall from Evanston, Flip McConaughey, who went on to serve as chief of staff for Senator Mike Enzi with distinction for years, Ed Collins, Mayor of Gillette, Ed Jolovich, and Mayor of Torrington, and a true friend who passed away last night. Don Whitaker was mayor for 16 years of Lusk, Wyoming, and was a true Wyoming original. He served for 16 years, a man of incredible vision. He had the whole town of Lusk wired with fiber optics 10 years before the internet hit town, or hit any town. As we still talk about the last mile today, he was wiring his whole town years before it was in vogue. Actually, Microsoft did a commercial this year at the Super Bowl. There was one of the first Microsoft commercials was a Super Bowl commercial that they did about wiring the town of Lusk. He served, like I say, with distinction. One year he was elected, or was unelected by 2 votes. Did a recount, came out as a tie. Did a second recount, came out with a 1-vote victory. Flew the Secretary of State up from Cheyenne to certify the vote, and then earned the nickname Landslide Whitaker from there on out. And he truly, truly was a friend of mine. Worked on the local government insurance pool, which helped small communities for years. Put together a pool where they could pool their liability and do so at a cost savings to them. It also enabled him the opportunity to throw his fly rod in the back of his car and fish everywhere in Wyoming. So he got paid for fishing, which was truly a true mark of a great man. So he passed away, and I just wanted to let the Senate know that I know we all honor his memory, and like I say, a true Wyoming original. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for the memories there, Senator Grew. Appreciate that. All right, Senators, we'll proceed. Bills on second reading. Again, for those listening, House Bill 3, House Bill 6, House Bill 8, House Bill 34, House Bill 42, and House Bill 48, House Bill 8 having an amendment. Senate File 3, second reading of the Senate file.
House Bill 3, Certified Addictions Practitioners Certification Amendments, sponsored by Labor.
There are no amendments. Senate File 3, House Bill 3 having been read 2 separate times. The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. House Bill 6, second reading of the House Bill.
House Bill 6, Trust Company Amendments, sponsored by Minerals.
There are no amendments.
Mr.
House
President?
Bills. Please proceed. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. Not an objection or an amendment, but there were a couple of questions that I told the chamber I would address today after seeking some guidance, and I wanted to raise those with good senators. The first of those was with regard to language that would or wouldn't allow a failing trust company to be guided to bankruptcy court. There's actually general belief within the Division of Banking that they could probably already do that right now but they're not certain, and they were looking for clarity in statute that would allow that without question. With regard to banks, though, which was another question, has this been done with banks? The answer is no, because banks can't declare bankruptcy. So the insolvency of banking institutions have to be handled separately and different ways that the Division of Banking already knows how to do, certainly, and is prepared to do. So with regard to trusts, there are some differences. They can enter bankruptcy. So that was the reason for the addition of the recommendation from the commissioner to bring a failing trust into bankruptcy. The second question that was raised was whether or not a domiciled bank in Wyoming could be an out-of-state chartered bank. And the answer is no, that if it is a domiciled bank pursuant to the language that's in this draft, it would have to be a state chartered bank or a nationally chartered bank domiciled in Wyoming, but you can't have a out-of-state state chartered bank domiciled in Wyoming. Thank you, Mr. President. Just wanted to make sure I answered those two questions that I did not know yesterday when asked.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions for Senator Rothfuss before we proceed? All right, thank you. House Bill 6, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. House Bill 8, second reading of the House bill.
House Bill 8, Consumer Credit Amendments, sponsored by Minerals.
There is an amendment. Will the reading clerk read in the amendment?
House Bill 8, second reading amendment number 1, to engross copy, page 2, line 15.
Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 8 and ask the body's favorable consideration. Mr. President, in testimony in the Minerals Committee, there was some concern with a House amendment that was brought, not necessarily with the substance of the House amendment, but with the language that ended up being put into place, which was confusing because it had a series of or clauses that would lead to some ambiguity. So I asked our good LSO to effectively redraft the same concept without changing the substance or policy so that it would provide clarity and address the concerns that we heard in committee that we were unable to address at the time. So this is effectively cleanup without any substantive change to address those concerns. And you can see, Mr. President, that it goes into it begins by going into page 2, line 15. And I gotta pull up the PDF version of the engrossed. My apologies for the pause. There we go. Page 2, line 15, and adds a bit of language. The duty to facilitate a refund or credit under this subsection shall also apply to voluntary cancellation of insurance or other products by a consumer. The House amendment specifically mentioned termination, but didn't allow for the or clauses that needed to take place, because there are several different reasons that you would have a termination or an end cessation of the product that would lead to the necessity for a refund or credit, not just termination from the one side, but the possibility of cancellation by the other. That needed to be clarified. And then page 2, line 21, delete the comma and delete that line on line 22 through consumer, which is again new language related to the House amendment, and then delete page 21, lines 7 through 11, again new language from the House side, and add the new paragraph, which is simply better phrasing of the same concept, that 4014-454 applies to insurance and other products that provide protection to a consumer and that terminate upon prepayment, default, or other circumstances that end an agreement, including guaranteed asset protection waivers and debt cancellation contracts. So, Mr. President, that's just a long way of saying this is better language that doesn't change any of the substance.
Thank you. Questions for the sponsor of the amendment? Questions? Senator Wasserberger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. President, I see this as a friendly amendment.
Okay, thank you. Further comment or question? Okay, question on the amendment, please raise your hands and hold them up for Chief Clerk.
Mr. President,
No, just a moment.
$25.
Thank you. Those opposed?
1.
Thank you. We've had the vote. Senator Hutchings, let's go back to you. You had a question.
I'm sorry, Mr. President. Thank you. All I wanted to ask was just for a little bit of time to digest what was being proposed. We got it, and then we immediately voted on it. So that's all I was wanting. It's just a little time. So I would have been an aye vote.
Thank you. Appreciate that. As a courtesy, before we leave for the final vote, would you like to ask the sponsor of the amendment anything?
No, sir. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right. House Bill 8, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objections, is as so ordered. House Bill 34, second reading of the House Bill.
House Bill 34, Youthful Offender Program Amendment, sponsored by Judiciary.
There are no amendments. House Bill 34, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. House Bill 42, second reading of the House Bill.
House Bill 42, Chancery Court Vacancy Amendments, sponsored by Judiciary.
Thank you. House Bill 42, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. House Bill 48, second reading of the House Bill.
House Bill 48, Community Juvenile Services Block Grant Program, sponsored by Appropriations.
Thank you. House Bill 48, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objections, it is so ordered. Consideration of bills on general file, Mr. Majority Floor Leader. We are at that order of business, consideration of bills on general file.
Thank you. Slow to hit my button. Mr. President, I move the Senate resolve itself into committee of the whole.
Thank you. You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Looks like the ayes have it. Senator Grew, you are now presiding over the Senate.
The Committee of the Whole, please come to order. The first bill for our consideration is House Bill 13. Will the Chief Clerk please read the bill?
Mr. Chairman, 13 was in committee this morning, and we have not received that bill to read in yet. Perhaps we might give the Majority Floor Leader an opportunity to reorder Committee of the Whole for us.
Okay.
I will. Thank you.
Sorry, Chief Clerk.
So 13, let's just drop 13 off and we'll start right at 30 and go on down. I think that is in revenue yesterday. So we'll start with 30. 27 will not be there as well because that report apparently has not come out of committee.
Excuse me, Mr. Majority Leader, 30 is in a noon meeting with revenue today?
Yeah.
Oh, very good. So I've just got the tentative file. I don't have a list in front of me that I can come off.
Perhaps I could
Mr.
read
Chairman, yes, let's have the Chief Clerk review the list for us for those in the Senate and those listening.
Correct. The ones that have been read in this morning, Mr. Majority Leader, are House Bill 3, 6, 8, 34, 32, and 48.
Okay, I will reorder the list that way. So the order will be House Bill 3, followed by House Bill 6, followed by House Bill 8, followed by House Bill 34, followed by House Bill 32, and House Bill 48. I apologize to everybody on the list, but that's the order we will take.
Point of order?
I'll call you Mr. Minority Floor Leader.
Point of order is none of those bills, I think, were on general file. And if I'm not mistaken, we had some of those were second reading. Didn't I just speak on some of those? Yeah.
Yes.
So that might not be the general file list, Madam
Let's-
Clerk. That might be the second reading list.
Mr. Chairman, again, if we could have Chief Clerk go over the list one more time.
Thank you, Mr. Minority Leader. You are absolutely right. I picked up the wrong pile on my desk. It is House Bill 918, HJ1, House Bill 25, and House Bill 66.
Okay. Thank you. I will try to get a whiteboard up with another computer, so I'm going to be off just a little bit, but our order will be House Bill 9, House Bill 18, House Journal 1, House Bill 25, and House Bill 66. I have another computer, and so there should be one more screen will pop up that will have the whiteboard on it. Hopefully we can read it. Thank you.
Mr. President.
Mr. Senator Case. I'll try to.
Mr. President, don't you find it very ironic that on Groundhog Day, we actually revisited second reading for another time?
Only Senator Case would know that.
Oh, gosh.
In-depth.
Which is February 2nd. I mean,
Yes.
it's all so mysterious. It's a conspiracy, Mr. President.
In-depth observation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Bill Murray will be popping up just shortly, folks.
Okay. If I may, start one more time then. If will committee of whole please come to order, the first bill for our consideration is House Bill number 9. If the Chief Clerk will read in the House bill.
House Bill 9, Short Time Compensation Program, an act relating to labor and employment sponsored by Minerals. It was referred to Committee Number 2, Appropriations, who referred a due pass recommendation back to the Senate, voting ayes, Senator Garreau, Hicks, Perkins, and Steinmetz. Senator Kinski excused.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Senator Wasserberger?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the committee of the whole rises to report, it do so with a favorable recommendation that House Bill 9, Short Time Compensation Program, do pass. And I will turn it over to the floor manager, who is a good, super duper acting chairman of the Minerals Committee. That would be me. So I'm going to walk you through this bill. Essentially, this is a CARES Act continuation. Essentially, the Department of Workforce Services came to the committee with a suggestion for this bill, and we can use CARES Act federal dollars to do it. We worked the bill over the interim, and this is a program called Short Time Compensation. And essentially, if an employee has less than 40 hours, they can continue to, and they've been laid off for a few less hours, they can continue to receive their full-time benefits. And so they can also use this if they work for 2 different companies, but are still short of the 40-hour work week. Other states have done this for many years, and it's kind of been something in Wyoming that we just never got around to do it. It's a very important bill, and it utilizes unemployment insurance like other states are doing. And it helps those people who are underemployed employees experience a loss of income. It does require a full-time equivalent employee at the Department of Workforce Services, but that money will be required to use that, the federal dollars from the CARES Act to pay for that person. And that was actually a House amendment. Excuse me, I don't think I'm supposed to say that, but that was also confirmed by the Senate Appropriations Committee. And essentially what happens is when we pass this bill, it becomes effective immediately. And the Department of Workforce Services is saying that they could have this up and running actually maybe as quickly as 2 weeks, but certainly within 8 weeks. And so when this passes, it will go into effect possibly during our live session in March, but at the latest by April 1st. And so we would be able to start getting some CARES Act money to those people who are underemployed. Essentially, it calls for a requirement of $177,000, and about $59,000 of that will be used to bring together the computer programs that they will need to make it interface with the Department of Workforce Services computer program and bring that in. And then the other 118,000 will be used for promotion and enrollment for employers. And this will last until actually December 31st of 2023. And then it sunsets at that point. We don't know how many people, how many employers will apply for this. However, the state directly to our south, when they did this, they had 6 employers using it. When they applied CARES Act money to it, they went to 1,077 employers using it. So we know that we're going to have some employers apply for this, and that will be approved by the Director of the Department of Workforce Services. It will be very similar to the other CARES Act application process. And Mr. Chairman, I believe that's kind of a short synopsis of the bill, and I stand for questions.
Questions for Chairman Wasserberg? Questions? Both screens. Senator Scott.
Mr. Chairman, my question is, suppose the CARES Act money runs out before the sunset of this program. Is that a possibility? And will that result in higher unemployment taxes for our employers?
Senator, any other questions? Let's see if we can, anyone else has any? Seeing none. Senator Wasserberg.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to, I believe that there's an exemption in the bill that allows employers to stay at the same percentage, even though they've used this. So I don't think it increases costs to employers. And I believe that we don't know what the answer is for the good senator from Natrona County, because we don't know what the continuation of the CARES Act money will be. We do know that we have 2 separate proposals, one by the majority party, I guess, which is 1.9 trillion, and then another proposal by the minority in the Senate, which is 700 billion. So I don't think I can answer that question. I guess I would throw a lifeline to the good senator from Albany County to answer that question.
Let's say, okay, Senator Rothfuss.
Mr. Chairman, I see the good senator from Natrona County, the not as tall one, has a question, so I'll wait for it.
Senator President Perkins.
Thank you, but it's chairman these days, but thank you for that. Or senator. Anyway, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the answer to that is found on page 20 of the bill, section 3 in particular, which you'll note that the department is authorized to apply for and receive and expend any federal funds made available under and subject to any requirements and limitations imposed by the Corona Aid Relief and Economic Security, the CARES Act, or from other available federal funding related to the COVID-19 emergency response. So that's trying to say that if there's existing CARES Act money or subsequent similar CARES Act money for COVID-19 relief, that it applies to that. So there's no authorization to expend general fund money or other state revenues. I believe that as I read Section 3, it's only an authorization to expend federal funds that are designated for COVID relief, whether they're specifically earmarked under federal legislation for purposes of unemployment insurance, compensation, or whether they're just general funds that would be expended to the state, in which that might take further action by the legislature or at least the governor's office to do that. But ultimately, as we were reading this and reviewing this last night in Senate Appropriations, that's the conclusion I came to in reading Section 3, which is substantially different and doesn't contain the same sunset provisions that our good friend, the super duper acting chairman of minerals, was talking about. But I believe that it has the effect that when the money runs out, that the program is no longer authorized to use other funds. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Vice President Hicks.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, and I would concur with the Paragon from Natrona County. I'll let them figure out which one that is. But Mr. Chairman, I would concur with the statement of the President of Appropriations Committee, but when that question came up, and just for clarification before we get to second reading, I thought the administrator of the program said that if we implemented this program with CARES Act funding, that we had to maintain the program for 5 years. So that's a question that I have on this after the testimony last night, but specifically to the taller Paragon from Natrona County. If you went through the fiscal note, it's indeterminable because the assumption is if we do this, it will keep people off the unemployment insurance rolls at a lower rate. And if that happens, there should be some savings to the program, but it may be expended, maybe higher expenditures if they don't use the program. So at this point in time, until we actually run a trial run, I'm not sure we know what the implications of the program are based on the testimony that we received. It could be positive, could be neutral, or it may have some slight detrimental effect to the corpus of the trust and the unemployment insurance pool. So I guess that was the takeaway I had from it.
Okay, Senator Nethercutt, then Senator Rothfuss. Senator Nethercutt, Chairman Nethercutt. Right?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question based on that information. The 5-year requirement, I'm assuming, is a stipulation associated with the receipt of the CARES Act funding in order to keep the program going. And if that's the case, would it be prudent to put a sunset provision in the bill associated with that 5-year requirement, just to allow the legislature to revisit the program and understand its fiscal impacts on our small businesses across the state?
Thank you, Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to address a few of the points that have been raised. The first thing I want to note is that tying this conceptually to the CARES Act, I don't think is a proper understanding of what's trying to be done here. The CARES Act funds that are tied to it were to help transition to a new program at a time when the program is particularly important. So the idea of having the availability of CARES Act funds to stand up the changes to the computer programming, to get a new person online that can help the transition, that was a convenience of using the CARES Act funds. And the intent is, if we have any federal funds available through CARES Act, we would make sure we would be pulling those. But we also know that there are federal funds available for unemployment insurance related to this type of program that can help facilitate it, which is why there is no general fund appropriation, but federal fund appropriations are going into this. With regard to the 5-year timeline, it's a minimum timeline of this program of 5 years if you're applying to utilize this type of unemployment insurance through the federal programs. So the 5-year timeline has nothing to do with the CARES Act. It simply has to do with us entering into an agreement with the Federal Department of Labor on engaging in this timeshare program or this work share program concept, which many other states, and I can find out the number of states, but I don't have it off the top of my head, have already adopted, and Wyoming did not adopt in the past, which regrettably hurt us during the pandemic. The idea here, and this is very much driven by employers. Employers want this because it allows employers to reduce hours instead of terminate employees in times of economic hardship, which we know we experienced and are still experiencing due to the pandemic, but it's not limited to the pandemic. Our employers have economic hardship just depending on economic circumstances. And whereas the current unemployment system basically says, if you have 10 employees and you need to cut your employees, you eliminate 5 of them, they go on unemployment, you keep the other 5, and that's the approach. This system allows a different approach, a more flexible approach for our employers to their benefit and to the employees' benefit, where if you need to save on payroll, instead of eliminating 5 and keeping 5, maybe you take half of those employees and you make them half-time. So you maintain their employment, your skilled, trained employees continue to have the ability to have a job at your workplace, you maintain their benefits, but you get to cut their hours. And this then provides additional flexibility to the employers to utilize the unemployment insurance in a better way. So those half-time employees where you cut half of their time through your business then are half-time on unemployment insurance. So it's a way to utilize the unemployment insurance program at a more granular level. And the states that already had this in place benefited tremendously from having it in place during the pandemic. And again, they typically see substantial cost savings because you can pull people back from unemployment very quickly. They're all ready to rejoin they'll be ready to rejoin the workplace immediately upon the employer having the availability of the funds and business to employ them, and they're already trained. So this is something that has been pulled upon by industry and by the employers for quite a while, and it's a program that we've been looking at, and the Department of Workforce Services has been looking at for quite a while to improve our unemployment insurance process in the state, but we didn't get to it before the pandemic, and we realized, well, we really, really need that tool at this point in time. It does not hurt the employer's unemployment insurance rating. It's a win-win-win from the standpoint of the state saves money, the employers save money, and the employees are more stable and are in better positions. And we heard not one whit of negative testimony against this bill because really, there is no loser, whether it's the state, industry, or employees. It's a shame we didn't have it sooner, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Rothfuss. Good discussion so far. Got a little more to go. Chairman Nethercott, then to Senator Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't disagree that it would have been very helpful to have during the pandemic as a result of the unique situation that's been created as a result of that. But this program is intended to last longer, and we are coming out of the pandemic. And a couple of things that I think might be incorrect, and I do have a sense of kind of a red flag going on that there's not more information provided by the department or at least that I'm aware of concerning the program. And I'm not necessarily against it, but I do think we're missing key parts. One, a full-time employee going down to part-time will lose benefits. And that's not an employment opportunity, that's health insurance, right?
They can't.
I don't know how that can't be the case, because the private health insurance company is going to make that decision, regardless of what the Department of Workforce Services thinks, or regardless of what the employer thinks. Otherwise, we'd have every employee that was part-time in the state of Wyoming covered under health insurance, but we don't. So I need more information about that piece. I'm also curious how it won't hurt an employer's rating to have an employee avail themselves of this program. And because then that means that there's no harm to me as a business to just making all my employees part-time and having the state fund the other half of their wage, right? So there's an incentive as a business owner for me to just push everyone off. It saves me a boatload of money. And the state picks up the other half of their paycheck, and I don't have to feel guilty about it. So one, some assurance that benefits are not actually lost, because I find that incredulous. I'm hoping it's true. And two, I appreciate that we don't want to hurt the rating, but this goes beyond COVID. This goes beyond the pandemic. And I think that there should be no penalty for COVID. But beyond that, if you're laying off employees at a regular rate for half time, you got to chip in because it's an insurance fund. So who's picking up that dime if not for the state budget?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Scott.
Mr. Chairman, following on with that, looking at the provision on page 20, that says to me that they're authorized to apply to federal funding, but I think if the federal funding isn't there, there's nothing here that prevents them from going ahead and running the program and getting funding from the Unemployment Trust Fund, which of course is filled up by the taxes, the payroll taxes on unemployment. I think this program may be quite beneficial. I think what we're seeing out of the new administration in Washington, clearly Wyoming's economy is going to take a hit, and already is taking a hit before that in the mineral area. So there'd be some use for this program, and I can see the benefits to it, but I don't see how we're going to get out of it without somebody paying for it. And I don't think the general fund's at any risk, but I think you could see the unemployment tax go up to cover any deficits produced by this program if there are deficits. And I don't know whether I buy the argument that it's going to be a good deal and will reduce our other expenses or not. I just don't have any real knowledge in that area, Mr. Chairman. So I do think we're running a risk with this, and I think we need a little better understanding of what that risk is.
Thank you, Chairman Scott. All right, let's see. Senator Rothfuss. Oh, then Senator Simons.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to address the two senators' questions. With regard to the health insurance, you cannot, by this statute, reduce anyone's benefits from their from health insurance or any of their other benefits. That's a part of the program that it has to be maintained. So as you drop from full-time to part-time as a benefited employee, your benefits have to be maintained, and they're going to be paid for by the employer effectively. That's not going to be a cost reduction. But the portion of reduced hours is going to go on the unemployment insurance. And again, that's by statute. They appear to be employed at that point, but they're drawing unemployment. And again, that's in statute, and this is how it operates in other states, and that is a Department of Labor requirement that to engage in this program, that has to be how it goes. So there's no exceptions to that. Most of this language is drafted in a way to conform with the Department of Labor requirements for this type of program, which again is popular and successful in other states throughout the country. Regarding the additional cost, and my apologies for saying it doesn't adversely affect the unemployer's rating without being the unemployment insurance rating for the employer without being specific. it doesn't adversely affect it relative to the current system. In fact, it's going to be better because you have partial unemployment instead of full unemployment, and you should be able to bring people back on more quickly. So yes, it's going to be paid for. It's going to be paid for under the same process that it's currently paid for, which is paying into unemployment insurance. You've got a rating. As you utilize the unemployment insurance process, your costs then go up. So I gave a false impression there, and my apologies for giving that false impression that somehow this was free where the other one wasn't. It's the same type of system. What I meant to communicate was that it leads to lower costs for the employer over the entire process of downsizing the workforce and bringing back on the employees as a result of the finer granularity in being able to utilize it. And I hope that helps to clarify. With regard to whether we're in this for the long haul and the long-term costs, looking to other states, we're not an island of a state. There are lots of other states engaging in this, and on second reading, I'll get more material from Department of Workforce Services to provide how many states are already utilizing this. And the states do see cost savings, and they see better outcomes and better performance because of how this program lets employers keep their workforce. You don't have to retrain. You don't lose the employee to a different job or a different business. And then when you have to tool back up, hire somebody new and train them. There's been great benefits, which is why our employers have all indicated that they're interested in bringing this on. And again, other states have seen overall cost savings and more efficient use of unemployment insurance as a result of this program. So it won't necessarily just be a mystery because we're not inventing this. We're following a long trail of other states that have already engaged in this program with the language we're using, because the language is basically drafted to conform with the Department of Labor requirements for how this program can be implemented while still being eligible for federal unemployment benefits. And I'll stop there, Mr. Chairman, and see what other questions we have.
Senator Steinmetz. Oop, we can't hear you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe some of my questions were answered with that. Thank you.
Terrific. Okay, good discussion. Any more of it? Chairman Perkins.
Thank you. And so I really appreciate the good senator from Albany County helped me through this. And I guess when it comes back to this, so I guess one of the key provisions for the cost is on page 19, lines 7 through 14. And so it talks about the short time compensation shall be charged to the employer's experience rating accounts in the same manner as unemployment compensation is charged under this act. And then provides the department can relieve those to the extent that they receive additional compensation from the federal government as otherwise specified by law. So, I guess the question I'd have is, what will be the initial effect on? Is this fund going to be funded through employment taxes that would otherwise go to the UI fund, but now will go here, or there'll be a separate tax, or does it believe that there's a federal grant to provide some kind of initial corpus for this fund and have it move forward? Just trying to understand how this will work. As I just finished a few weeks ago, paid my unemployment compensation to the state of Wyoming, and went through that process. And as you do every quarter, you write them a check. And so I'm just wondering, will that be the same thing that we see employers do under this program?
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Hutchings has had her hand raised for a period of time.
I apologize. I just saw her on the screen. Senator Hutchings.
I forgot my question, Mr. Chairman. No, I didn't. Mr. Chairman, thank you, and Senator Nethercott, thank you as well. I share the concerns of my good senator, fellow senator from Laramie County, and would like someone to just go in a little deeper on the fiscal note, explaining at least the last two paragraphs. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Again, I do apologize. Anybody want to take that question or any other questions at this point? Looking to see if someone Senator Rothfuss. Whoop, you're muted.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I clicked it and it didn't unclick. Mr. Chairman, going to the former senator or former president from Natrona County's question, there won't be any change to the funding or process, particularly from the employer standpoint. You're going to write that same check. The check value shouldn't change in the near future. Maybe there will be changes if we realize savings in the long run as a result of this. Hopefully then the cost will go down. But from the funding standpoint, it's going to go into the same unemployment insurance pool, same process. And this would be another tool where employers could make the request, write a plan for how they would like to utilize this program, and realize benefits differently as the payout for the unemployment insurance side of it, as opposed to for the unemployment side, as opposed to the paying inside of it. So it should be seamless until you're using it. And then when you're using it, you'll see, as you read through the process, that you have to put together a plan of action on how you want to utilize it, provide that to the department for approval. The department will either approve it and then you utilize that plan, or provide some amendment or other concepts to work with the employer and make sure that it can move forward. With regard to the appropriation, and I'm sorry that we're spending so much time on the 177-ish thousand total dollars that need to be used when this is a multi-million dollar fund and program, and it's at the core of what workforce services do. They have no problem and no concern about the funding for this in workforce services. It's just the fact that we needed to make sure that we were utilizing federal funds for the one position and for the reprogramming that was going to need to take place of the software that would fulfill this. But in terms of the long-term ongoing, it's just not something that workforce services was particularly concerned about. They weren't seeing extra work as a result of it. They weren't concerned that they were ever going to have to come to the general fund and ask for additional money, because once again, this is seen as something that's going to save costs from the unemployment insurance program overall, and has been demonstrated to be very effective in other states. So hopefully it is a program that we will embrace and move forward, because again, and I encourage every last member of the Senate to reach out to your business community and see if they would like this flexibility. This was the most popular, most favored piece of legislation in the Minerals Committee during this off season, heavily supported by industry and employers. And again, very well vetted. If there is more information that the body would like from workforce services, we can get some of the background material and circulate it. It sounds like there is some general interest in that. And I'd be happy to put that together and get it to the chamber for second reading, so you've got a little bit more background, as well as I definitely want to follow up, Mr. Chairman, and get more information about the states that are utilizing this, which sounds like it would be of benefit to the chamber. So, Mr. Chairman, I'll stop there and we'll see who else has some questions.
Okay, we're getting close here. Chairman Perkins.
Okay, thank you. And changing the subject a little bit, but still on the bill. So as I understand it, two things. One is that employers don't participate. This is basically a voluntary, you have to opt in. Employers don't participate in this unless they want to. That's one. And then the other one is with respect to the kind of the, as I read the bill, particularly back on page 4, the employer has to submit a plan. However, those plans there'll be a pro forma plan that will be prepared by the insurance, by the department, and basically just, you can sign and submit that. So I think I get that. So please, one, confirm those 2 points. And then the third one is there much flexibility as how much flexibility will employers have as they submit their plan? It's a pro forma plan, but how much flexibility will they have in how they design that plan for their own needs? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Hutchins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't believe my question on the fiscal note was answered. Maybe I missed it, but the good senator from Albany County, perhaps in his research, he can put somewhere in his notes how this program is going to increase the national debt. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Scott.
Mr. Chairman, on the fiscal note, as I read that, DWS also notes the program may have potential increases in unemployment insurance expenditures for the unemployment trust fund, depending on the level of employer participation. Mr. Chairman, I read that as a statement that there is a significant probability that because the unemployment trust fund is funded by the employer's taxes, if there's an increase in expenditures there, somebody's going to have to pay for that. It's either going to be the employers that participate in this program, or it's going to be all the employers in the state. And it sounds to me like if the employers that participate are protected from their experience rating going up, it sounds to me like we're going to tax all the employers in the state to pay for this program. And maybe I'm misreading something here, but I'm getting very close to being a no on third reading on this bill. I think we need to figure out who's going to pay for it a little better than we have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman Scott. Senator Steinmetz, then Senator Kinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And we didn't have quite enough information in committee last night. We requested a few more documents. So just to answer a few questions, as of May 2020, there were 27 states across the country with short-time compensation programs as provided by the department. To provide an example, Nebraska alone, the plan there utilized between July 1st and June 30th, 2020, they averted 6,172 layoffs. And if you look in your inbox, I provided the entire Senate these documents as well that were provided to us late last night. So there's that, but then there's also the fact that we're talking about 177,000, but if you look, the total funding cost is $295,202 between 2021 and 2022. They are anticipating that would be paid for with federal funds. So that is just the cost to administrate the plan. And obviously in 2021, that's just a partial funding for a partial year. And so those are the truer numbers than the 177,000. I was a yes in committee. I'm starting to question whether to move this bill forward as well, because the other part of it that is a little bit of aversion to me is that we're paying people not to work, and I like to pay my people to work. I don't want to see our costs go up as employers. And so I'll continue listening and seeing if we can get some more of these questions answered as we go forward, because I would hate to see a good program go to waste. But I will be watching closely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Kinski.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I would urge the body to an aye vote, at least on first reading, until we can obtain some more information. We've got 2 more readings to go. My yes vote on third is going to be conditioned on a couple of things. I want to make sure that a company can truly elect or not elect to participate, and that if they do, any additional costs are purely on that company or like companies and not shifted to other employers. It does make a great deal of sense. It moves our unemployment system a little bit closer to a German model, which, you know, may or may not be a recommendation. But I've read that the German model is good in that the benefit of it is that you, as has been stated, you get to keep these trained people, but you've got a downturn. And right now you got one of 2 choices: lay them off or keep them on. And this gives you the ability to reduce hours till you get over a bad stretch, keep your trained people on staff. The unemployment fund helps out, all of which is good, as long as employers who are not opting to participate are not paying for part of that cost. So I would urge, I have taken the advice suggested by our colleague from Albany County, and I've reached out to my business community. I've heard from one that says they're strongly in favor of it, which was a surprise to me. So I'm going to continue to talk to the folks back home and continue to listen and learn, but I'd urge us to keep this bill moving along. We always have time on third reading to stop it if we find that it's just not to our liking, but I don't have enough information to say that at this point. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senators. Looks like we're getting close here. We still got a couple unanswered questions. Before we vote, anyone take a last shot? Any other questions we need answered? I know we've got a couple hanging that we'll try to get for second reading, but anyone else? Looks like we're getting close. Okay. If you're ready for the question.
Chairman.
All those.
Mr. Chairman.
Whoop, I'm sorry, Senator Rothfuss.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to follow up on a few of the outstanding questions. Whether or not it's optional is important, and yes, the traditional program, unemployment insurance program, if you don't want to write one of these plans, you would not be obligated to do so. So this is an additional tool. As far as the pro forma versus flexibility, the good senator from Natrona County, there would be some standard practices, but there's quite a bit of flexibility when you read through the way the bill is drafted. When you're reducing somebody's hours, for example, you have flexibility between a 10% reduction and 60% reduction. You can't select individual employees, but you can do divisions and sections. You kind of have to have standard plans for specific classes so that it's not seen as ways to isolate individuals. But there's a lot of flexibility as written, certainly, and that was one of the things that we on the Minerals Committee saw as a substantial benefit, was that level of flexibility if you wanted to write a detailed plan and you had a complicated organization to be able to do so. With regard to how this would affect the national debt, once again, overall, the experience is that you end up with less unemployment total, less time, less total hours or days, or however you want to calculate it, of unemployment using this nuanced system as opposed to the blunt object that we use currently. So as a result, the expectation would be that this would reduce the impact on the national debt if the experiences of other states was realized in the state of Wyoming, which would be the expectation. With regard to whether you can opt in or out and not be affected by it in terms of your payments in, this is going into the standard pool of funding. And so the rates and the unemployment insurance costs are, again, program-wide. So as I mentioned before, this is not setting up an isolated, brand new, separate program that's set aside and funded entirely separately. This is a program within unemployment insurance. So it is utilizing the same pool. The payment rates are going to be, again, program wide. So I don't want anyone to be misled or believing that somehow this is a completely separate program. You can opt in or opt out of whether you want to write one of these plans, but it is part of the unemployment insurance program, as has been done in other states and as is consistent with the Department of Labor. We don't have a great deal of flexibility in sort of writing our own plan. There was a lot of back and forth between the state of Wyoming, Department of Workforce Services, and the Department of Labor, because again, this is a federal opportunity with regard to the unemployment insurance program that you can either opt into as a state or not. But again, there's a rule set that effectively goes along with it. With that, Mr. Chairman, I think that addresses at least the questions that I still had in front of me that remained unanswered. And I would ask the body for a couple of things. Let's move this forward and get new information if there are those among you that are concerned. But what I would invite all of you that do have concerns is don't take my word on it, because you're probably not going to anyway. The word that I want you to listen to is your business community. If you go and ask your business community, hey, do you want this? And they come back and they say, no, don't pass that, then come back here and vote no on third reading. But if your business community says, yes, that tool would be incredibly valuable to us, as apparently the first response for the good senator from up in Sheridan County did, then your business community would be consistent with the entirety of the business community we heard from on the minerals community, which was enthusiastically supportive of this. And I hope you'll base your third reading vote on their views instead of sort of the opinions that we're gathering from some concerns of the day. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd call for the question, and let's get on with it.
Senator McCowan.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I just want to make sure I understood what was just said. So you cannot put your plan together based on one or two employees. It has to be by section or division. As a small business owner, I don't have section or divisions. I just have individual employees. So does that make me uneligible? And anybody like me, which is about 60% of the state?
Thank you, Senator Office. Real quick.
Yeah, quick follow-up on that, Mr. Chairman. Senator McCune, no, you'd be fine with yours. When you're building an overall plan, the idea, if you have divisions, that you have a division-wide policy. When you don't have divisions, obviously it is a matter of, I've got 3 people, I'm gonna put a policy in for 2. So no, there's no concern for your circumstances. It's very well suited for small business and in fact pretty ideal for small businesses. Sorry for that confusion.
Okay, so sensing we're ready to vote, anyone calling for the question? Yes, I thought I heard that. All those in favor of Senator Wasserberger's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report, it do so with a favorable recommendation on House Bill number 9. All those in favor, hold your hand to the screen. Okay, those opposed?
I got 26 and 1 no.
What I got. Thank you, Chief Clerk. Okay. Well, that's one. Members, I promised the majority floor leader I'd get this moved along. So the next bill for our consideration.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Could you announce that bill has passed?
I'm sorry. I apologize.
Thank you.
Hurry, here we go. So House Bill 9 has passed the committee of the whole. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 18. Would the Chief Clerk please read the House Bill?
House Bill 18, Military Training Memorials, an act relating to honoring military members, sponsored by Transportation. It was referred to Committee Number 8, Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs, who returned a due pass recommendation. Voting aye, Senators Furphy, Landon, McCune, Pappas, Senator Anderson absent. Signed, William Landon, Chairman.
Landon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the committee of the whole rises to report, to do so with a due pass recommendation on House Bill 18, military training memorials. And for an explanation of the bill, we'll stay right here and I'll do my best, fellow senators. Before we do that, Mr. Chairman, I wanted to point out that if you go to the legislative bills on the main website, that is a better place for you to find the engrossed copy of this bill. If you click on the bill that is listed under our committee of the whole today, for example, I believe that gives you the original version, and that's not what we're going to be working on or off of. And so, Mr. Chairman, if you go to legislation 2021 and then find House Bill 18, I believe that you'll be able to find the engrossed version. And I'm drawing this out just a little bit to allow all of our senators to find the correct version of the bill, as well as those who might be listening in, members of the public. So military training memorials, fellow senators, comes to you from the Transportation Committee from the interim work that was done over the past year. Very happy to represent this bill and all that went before and the efforts that led to its drafting and passage over on the other side. I have forwarded a couple of pieces of information to all of you. If you haven't had an opportunity to read the historical piece done by one of our historians here in the state of Wyoming, I commend it to you. I found it to be very informative, and in fact, I have to admit to you, this is a part of the world, the Casper Air Base during the 1940s is something I still don't know enough about. And having read the material to get prepared to share this bill with all of you, it has reminded me that I need to do a better job of getting up to speed. It's an amazing piece of Wyoming's history. And so I hope you enjoy that article. Along with that, senators, I sent you the volunteers who have put a lot of time and effort into the Casper Air Base, the history therein, the military museum out there, and the topic for which this bill is addressing. They have developed a slide presentation that I think hopefully you'll find that useful as well. I'm not going to walk slide by slide through this presentation today. I would just call your attention, Mr. Chairman, to section 1 on the engrossed copy. And believe it or not, this bill was actually improved by the other side. I like the bill a lot better than the original version. What this bill does is ask the Department of State Parks and Cultural Resources to cooperate with our Wyoming military and with our Wyoming Department of Transportation to work with these volunteers that have spent those hours to locate these crash sites from that Casper Air Base back in the 1940s. Recently, that group has found another of these crash sites, and it's out between Casper and Laramie, just underneath the Shirley Basin Rim, for those of you who have traveled that road. So one of these training memorials would be located, for example, right there at the rest stop that is maintained by the Wyoming Department of Transportation. We heard quite a bit of testimony yesterday from the director of the Department of Transportation. If these were to be placed in those spots, the director has indicated to us that it shouldn't be any problem for a little bit of additional maintenance because they maintain those rest stops anyway. I would say that maybe the best part of the amendment that changed this bill is to turn this over to the Department of State Parks. The state parks folks have a small office that deals with these memorials and markers throughout the state. And believe it or not, we have over 200 of them. And so they already do that work. The other benefit of asking that department to work with these folks to hopefully erect some of these memorials is the fact that they can receive donations. And this has been turned essentially into an effort that is private with a little bit of support from our state agencies. Once again, I would point out that in the slide presentation, it shows the crash sites that have been found. One of those is Bomber Mountain, which I think many of us are aware of, Mr. Chairman. Also, one of those planes that went down, a B-24, went down up in the small town of Edgerton. And lots of interesting stories around all of this, but I'll just share this much. There's a gentleman up there in Edgerton who was a young boy when that plane went down, and he has lived there his entire life. He would tell you that it's pretty important and compelling that we need to preserve these stories. This coming July, that group and some of the elected representatives from up in that part of the world are going to put a small monument up there in Edgerton to commemorate the crew that went down. The pilot, incidentally, that went down in that one, fellow senators, had flown 35 missions over Italy during World War II. He came home to train some of our young pilots, and for whatever reason, there were mechanical difficulties on that airplane. 4 of those young servicemen were able to get out of the airplane. By the time the pilot and the co-pilot tried to eject, they were too close to the ground. And so that's just one of the stories that has been gathered up. Pretty fascinating time in our state's history, but at any rate, that's probably enough for now. Mr. Chairman, I think this is a really good little bill that has been made better by the other side. So I'll stand for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question, Senator Hicks.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I have a parliamentary inquiry associated with the fiscal note on this, whether this should have been re-referred to the Appropriations Committee, and especially in light of the changes that now we would be using transportation funds to go to the state parks. So given that fiscal note on there, I'm just wondering whether this should have been re-referred to the Appropriations Committee.
All right, then. Thank you. Chairman Landon.
Mr. Chairman, I decided that it probably would not go to the Appropriations Committee. I'm happy to re-refer this bill, but the fact that there really is no longer a fiscal note as it reads in the original bill, there is some in-kind support that would be given simply in the cleanup around the monuments, maybe a little bit of support from the Department of Transportation, but no budgeted amounts of money.
Senator Scott, then Senator Schuler.
Mr. Chairman, the sponsor of the bill got my attention when he mentioned memorial located at the Shirley Basin Rest Area. Mr. Chairman, that rest area is was carved out of my pasture and it's surrounded by my pasture. So the question I have, did the committee have any indication that they were going to enlarge that rest area? Because if they do, I got a conflict on this bill. If it's just within the rest area, no.
Okay, now let's see, before I go to Senator Schuler, I want to make sure we're satisfied on the parliamentary inquiry of Senator Hicks. Senator Ralphus, and then Senator Hutchings, I see you there too. But
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just on the parliamentary, with the amendments, looking at the engrossed version, the fiscal note does not appear to apply any longer with the $20,000. And it seems, in my opinion, from a parliamentary standpoint, that good chairman from Casper is correct, that it doesn't appear to need a re-referral to appropriations.
Thank you. Senator Hicks, do you want to withdraw your parliamentary inquiry then on that?
Mr. Chairman, I think it was answered, and I would concur with that. With the amendment, it no longer has the appropriations
to
be valid.
Thank you, Senator Hicks. Senator Hutchings, was that your feeling too on that, or is that what you wanted to speak to, or something else? You're recognized.
No, Mr. Chairman, thank you for the acknowledgement. I was concerned about the fiscal note. Just to let the body know, there were some no votes on this particular bill because of the fiscal note. We just didn't think it was appropriate at this time of shortage in our state spending money on memorials. So that cleared it up for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just speaking on and for the bill, I have to admit the good senator from Natrona County really piqued my interest with the article that he sent forward. I knew a little bit about the Army Air Base in Casper, not a lot. And so that was really very informative. Had no idea that there were so many crashes and that we'd lost so many of our servicemen and women. And so I think this bill really has a lot of merit. I like the fact that we're not using state funds, that, you know, it's just opening it up for private donations. And I think that's kind of the way we're going to have to go from here on out, is to start looking more for foundations and grants and money from other sources other than the state. But I really appreciate the information because, like I said, I was educated on it. I had no idea there were, I think I may have heard about the Casper Mountain crash. That's about the only thing I think I recall ever hearing about it. So thank you very much, the good senator, and on and for the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. For the questions, comments? Questions, comments? Look and check on both screens. Senator Chairman Landon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of answers to questions that have been asked. There was no testimony regarding any desire to enlarge the rest stop out there in Shirley Basin. There's plenty of room there to acknowledge this. Regarding the fiscal note that was referenced by the senator from Laramie County, that no longer exists. And so this bill has been set up in an entirely different way. So just a couple of final thoughts on the bill, and really hope you'll support it. I think it does three things. It gives the ability for a group who has dedicated a lot of hours to this, the ability to go out and accept donations. It brings our military department in at the appropriate time. It is a coordinated effort with our highway department. And then finally, it just lends legislative support and to something that I think is an important part of our history. So I hope you'll support the bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Any further questions, comments? Sensing you're ready to vote.
Question.
Last time. Question being called. All those in favor of Senator Landon's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report, that it do so with a favorable recommendation that House Bill 18 do pass. Those in favor, hold your hands to the screen or say aye. Those opposed.
It was unanimous, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Madam Chief Clerk. House Bill 18 is passed the committee of the whole. Our next bill for our consideration is House Joint Resolution number 1. Would the Chief Clerk please read in the House Joint Resolution?
House Joint Resolution number 1. Engrossed, traumatic brain injury and post-traumatic stress treatments. A joint resolution requesting Congress to enact legislation and requesting that the Veterans Administration work to expand and improve efforts to treat traumatic brain injuries and post-traumatic stress disorder, sponsored by Transportation. It was referred to your committee number 8, Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs, who returned a recommendation that it do pass, voting aye Senators Furphy, Landon, McCune, and Pappas, Senator Anderson absent, signed William Landon, Chairman.
Chief Clerk, Senator Landon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move that when the committee of the whole rises to report, it do so with a do pass recommendation on House Joint Resolution 1, traumatic brain injury and post-traumatic stress treatments. There is a committee of the whole amendment, Mr. Chairman. I would ask that that be read in at this time.
Madam Chief Clerk, would you read in the amendment?
Yes, House Joint Resolution 1, Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 1, to engrossed copy, page 1, line 6.
Mr. Chairman, I would move the committee of the whole amendment at this time and ask for the support of fellow senators. This is one of those amendments that came to us yesterday. And honestly, the chairman of transportation simply forgot to deal with it. So it's a committee of the whole amendment instead of a standing committee amendment, Mr. Chairman. But it is just simply a cleanup amendment. I think it tracks in pretty easily for you, and I would just ask for your support before we go to an explanation of the joint resolution.
Fair enough. Any questions on the amendment? Questions on the amendment? Sensing you're ready to vote. All those in favor of Senator Landon's motion to adopt the committee of the whole amendment number 1 to House Bill or to House Joint Resolution number 1, please indicate by holding your hand to the screen. Those opposed?
One opposed.
Opposed. Thank you, Madam Chief Clerk. The amendment, or committee of whole amendment number 1 to House Bill 18 passes, or House Joint Resolution number 1 passes. Back to you there, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would ask that for an explanation of this fine resolution, you would turn to the senator, the junior senator from Campbell County, for an explanation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This joint resolution is basically dealing with traumatic brain injuries and post-traumatic stress. It kind of points out that we're looking at about 22 suicides a day from veterans, and the care they're getting from the VA is pretty simple, but it's very much organized around medications and a little bit of counseling. The idea behind this is they've had some units treat traumatic brain injuries in northern Colorado with a hyperbaric chamber, and they've had a little bit of success with it. The other part of this joint resolution is pushing on the VA to dig into different areas to treat PTSD other than what some of us veterans like to call the monthly supply of blue bombers, which is just medication that kind of numbs you. Eventually you got to get off that, and they got to find another way to solve the problem. And with that, I'll stand for questions.
Questions for Senator McCown on House Joint Resolution number 1. Mr. Chairman Landon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of other thoughts. We had some great testimony in committee on this resolution from our military folks, and appreciate the senator from Campbell County doing a great job of explaining where this comes from. I also wanted to tip the Stetson to the senator from Goshen County who served on this committee over the previous interim and brought this issue to the Transportation Committee, and thus we ended up with this resolution. I think many of us, especially those who have been around the Senate for a little while, we know all about these resolutions. Some of us have even checked with our congressional delegation back in Washington to see if whatever happens to these things, I can remember a good friend, Mr. Chairman, from your neck of the woods, who used to come down and pontificate in the Senate. And this is one of the things he would stand up every time and he'd say, you know, this is kind of like baying at the moon. Nevertheless, senators, I think this one is important because it expresses from our legislature how much we care about our veterans and hope that they will push the envelope to help these young men and women. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I won't start with any Senator Larson stories. I'll just go to Chairman Perkins.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I don't want to be a fly in the ointment, but I was looking, I just became interested in about this hyperbaric oxygen therapy treatment, and going back and looking and just doing a number of studies from, what appear to be independent studies, so that there's not a lot out there. Just, it appears to me that unless there's something more recent, that the jury's kind of still out on hyperbaric oxygen therapy for treating TBI. And, as you look at that, I mean, National Institute of Health and others, the places that you find that think that do well are the people who generally are providing that therapy to folks. So I'm just wondering, we need to do all we can. TBI is an incredibly debilitating condition. And it certainly can be, the more severe it is, it just makes life so hard and so tough. And oftentimes people have TBI have no other symptoms. So that, for the person who just meets them on the street, they don't understand or recognize that this person has an injury. You just can't see it. And so I have a lot of that, but I just want to get to the bottom about this. One thing to jump up and say that we're supporting it, but the other one I'm seeing is that, I mean, one study showed that there was really no substantial difference between the hyperbaric oxygen therapy folks that actually received it and got it, and others that went through a trial, which was, they called sham trial, which was the control group, which had the placebo effect. So anyway, I'd just be interested in hearing about that and calming my fears about are we insisting or advocating for something that sounds great and we think we're doing something, but at the end of the day, we haven't really done anything that helps. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To answer a couple of those questions, one of the reasons this was brought to us is because they have been running acts at the federal level on this as well. The latest was Senate 2504 TBI and PTSD Treatment Act by a senator there. And they were asking states to also get on board to ask that be passed at the federal level. I don't think that we're mandating that anything be taken care of, but just that veterans have the right to choose that option should they so choose, knowing all the informed consent type of actions that would need to take place there for a veteran to decide if they would like to participate in that or not. And so one of the things that's just not covered right now through the services provided through Veterans Affairs. And so that was the impetus behind this bill. I hope that answers some questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Scott.
Mr. Chairman, I am a little nervous, Mr. Chairman, about endorsing specific therapies and legislation. I don't think we're very well qualified to do that. So my question, Mr. Chairman, is, well, let me say that I do understand there's problems with veterans, the Veterans Affairs healthcare system. I think it may be a good argument against ever letting the government run our healthcare system in total. But the question I have for the Senate is, would we be better off if we got rid of the specific references to the hyperbaric oxygen therapy, because that may or may not be a good idea. I don't think we're in a position to really know. It's one thing to say that we think that more physical therapy, more occupational therapy ought to be available. That's pretty generic. And the counseling the same way. But the question I have, should we remove that reference from this thing?
Thank you, Senator. Further comments? Chairman Landon.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate some of the comments this morning, and honestly, a couple of those suggestions were not considered in our committee meeting. If the good senator from Bates Creek would like to bring something on that front, I'm sure that we would consider that on second reading. I kind of look at this in a little bit broader way. I think the idea of this resolution, as much as anything, is to encourage our congressional folks and our Veterans Administration to try to push the envelope a little bit. Our veteran floor manager, good senator from Campbell County, alluded to that we tend to get stuck in some ruts. And if there are some cutting edge things going on out there, I think that's really what the suggestion of this resolution is to ask our Veterans Administration back in the Beltway to get on this. Let's try to help our veterans a little bit better. So we'll end it at that point, and certainly if the good senators want to bring some suggestions to this resolution on second or third reading, we can take them up at that time, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. Senator James.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just wondering why we're bringing a bill putting the care of our veterans back in the federal hands of the delegation when they've done nothing for decades but fail veterans, especially at the VA, when they get a lot better care in the private sector. The VA has failed them over and over and over again. There's been stories for years now about how they failed them, and asking the delegation to do something about it is pretty much pointless. And if we really wanted to do something, we would, give them the option, if we can, to, do something here. But yeah, asking them to, please do something up there, they're not going to do it. They're more happy using military as pawns in elections and stuff like that. They're not going to do anything. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Any other further comment? Oh, Senator Pappas.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, all we're asking in section 1 is that we ask Congress to provide what is in the Traumatic Brain Injuries and Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder Treatment Act. So, and that all includes already hyperbaric oxygen therapy. And so that's only one of the things that this resolution gets at. I mean, it gets at all treatment for this stress disorder, whether it be authorizing therapies like counseling and other forms of therapy, but it also includes whatever is in the act that I just mentioned. And so I think that we're not actually highlighting one therapy. We're highlighting all of them that are in that act. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Hutchings.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to push back on something the previous senator said in regards to the VA. My husband and I are both patients of the VA, and we've received extremely good care I've received medical treatment from the VA in DC that was phenomenal. It was state-of-the-art treatment that we don't see across the country. A system called Oscitron, where they go in and actually microwave cartilage, bones, sinews of the veteran, and that microwave procedure actually restores or allows for healing of those areas. I've received that treatment 4 times and can say it's phenomenal. Not everybody has negative comments about our Veterans Administration. So I'm on and for this bill, giving our veterans any and every opportunity to receive state-of-the-art treatment or something just a little outside the box. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Rothfuss, did I see your hand up? There you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Chairman, listening to the discussion about the hyperbaric oxygen chamber and the good tall senator from Natrona County's concerns, I just wanted to note that I share those concerns about including specific treatments on the list as opposed to the broader treatments. Physical therapy, occupational therapy, cognitive therapy, and speech therapy are all general concepts that then will have different treatment mechanisms based on best standard practice and care. And whereas hyperbaric oxygen therapy is a very specific treatment category that has recent clinical trials, and I find that a little bit awkward. And then the next whereas paragraph that goes along with it. So I guess I'd ask the proponents of the bill and getting to the discussion by the tall senator from Natrona County, if it would be appropriate, or if they would be amenable to removing that specific language and just sticking with the broader language about the importance of traumatic brain injury and post-traumatic stress disorder.
Thank you, Senator. Let's see, Chairman Landon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I said before, we would certainly, I think, all of us be willing to take a look at suggestions that might come forth on second reading. Honestly, we did not get into that conversation regarding the specifics of this kind of treatment. That was one of the reasons, one of the genesis of the bill. It comes out of northern part of the state below us, where they've had some success, and some of our veterans have come home to report that to us. And so that being sort of the reason for the joint resolution, hey, we can consider that on second reading, Mr. Chairman. For now, I would encourage the Senate to support the resolution and move it forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Further comments?
Question.
Question being called. Are we ready? All those in favor of Senator Landon's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report, that it do so with a favorable recommendation that House Joint Resolution 1 do pass. All those in favor, hold your hand to the screen to say aye. All those opposed? Let's see, 1, 2, 2?
2 opposed.
House Joint Resolution number 1 is passed committee of the whole. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 25. Would the chief clerk please read in the House bill?
House Bill 25, Tribal Vehicle Registration Exemption Implementation, an act relating to motor vehicles, sponsored by Select Tribal Relations. It was referred to your committee number 8, Transportations, Highways, and Military Affairs, which returned a recommendation that it do pass. Voting aye, Senators Furphy, Landon, McCune, Pappas, with Senator Anderson absent. Signed, William Landon, Chairman.
Chairman Landon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I would move that when the committee of the whole rises to report, to do so with a due pass recommendation on House Bill 25, Tribal Vehicle Registration Exemption Implementation. And with an explanation of the bill and to represent this fine work done by our Tribal Relations Committee, I would ask that you call on Senator Ellis.
Co-Chair Ellis, I'm sorry, that's a title on tribal relations, I think. Take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To explain this bill, I just want you all to think about your vehicles and what happens every year when you're getting new tags. When your vehicle registration needs to be renewed, your county treasurer sends you a postcard or a bill and says, you know, pay this and either write us a check and put it in an envelope and send it back to us, or they give you instructions online how you can pay. And so that's kind of the standard that most of us are used to when it comes to renewing our vehicle registrations. But something's different on the reservation. And to give you a little bit of background about why that is, I just want to mention that right now, tribal members, if you are an enrolled member of the Eastern Shoshone and Northern Arapaho, you are exempt from vehicle reservation fees if you live on the reservation. And if you look at the statute, this really wasn't necessarily a policy choice of the legislature. It was in response to some Supreme Court decisions that came out in the early 90s that made it very clear that states have very little ability to tax the property of tribal members who live on their reservations. And so in compliance with that Supreme Court decision from the 90s, Wyoming added to its list of exemptions that tribal members in Wyoming do not have to pay these registration fees. What this bill does is tries to simplify the process for renewing the registration for those vehicles. So if you go on to page 2, and I point you to line 8, you're going to see that the current process requires that the vehicle owner go to the county treasurer's office and sign a sworn claim indicating that they qualified for this exemption. And over the years, we've learned a lot. By and large, the people that live on the reservation and qualify for this exemption, they don't move. And so this has become somewhat of a burden. And during the year of COVID that we've had, we've seen that, it's not necessarily in the best interest for these folks to actually have to travel, show up in person and get their tags renewed. So what this bill does would allow the tribal members to be treated very much like we're treated. The county treasurer in Fremont County would send a registration renewal to the individual. And at that time, they initially would have, when the vehicle's new and they're doing their initial registration, they'd have to go into the county treasurer. But after that, they would receive a card and they'd have to verify and assert that they still live on reservation. And so you'll see right here some duties that if the person moves off reservation, that registration vehicle fees would apply. And it just would require them, if they move within 60 days, and that's standard in the transportation title, to notify the county treasurer if they do move off reservation. So this really has a very limited application. It's really going to impact Fremont County. The good senator from Fremont County can give you an on the ground account of why this bill is necessary. And it really is an attempt to start treating our tribal members very much like we, the rest of us, are in Wyoming when we get our vehicles renewed. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Chairman Ellis. Questions for the chair? Senator Hutchings.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Ellis, my question or my comment to you is, veterans have disabled veteran tags. And every time we have to go in and renew our tags with our exemption, we have to bring a letter from the VA, Veterans Administration, verifying that we are indeed still disabled veterans. So when you say we, I don't know if the we includes those disabled veterans who also have an exemption. Just so you know, we have to go in each and every renewal period, hand them a letter that says we are indeed exempt. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Case.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I think that's a good point about this bill. And I would like to expand the way that our exemptions are given in a manner that eliminates that exact problem that the good senator from Laramie County brought up. And this does it for the tribal members, but we should be doing it in all areas that we can. If an exemption is based on a status that a person has, a disability, veteran status, what have you, we're doing a disservice by requiring so much paperwork every year to qualify when the status doesn't change. And so, in fact, when I brought this to the attention of the Department of Transportation, they mentioned the same thing that the good senator from Laramie County has mentioned. So that's a good one for us to work on, and for the exact same reason. Back to this bill, Mr. Chairman, this is very important. I have the wonderful fortune of representing really almost everywhere on the reservation where people live. And this has been a bit of a rub, and especially this year with COVID, that none of these status things have changed. They still have the same vehicle. They live on the reservation, and they're enrolled members of one of the our two great tribes. And so there is really no need, other than the law says you have to come in and make the same swearing again. So this does away with that. But it doesn't change whether the exemption exists or not. If you move or you get a different vehicle, then you have to do the paperwork again and make the swearing. Just by way of a little bit of background, this comes about from an Oklahoma case of a long, long time ago. At the time, the Secretary of State in Wyoming was Joe Meyer. And the Oklahoma case said that the state of Oklahoma could not impose a property tax on tribal members living on the reservations. And so Wyoming, they came to the legislature, the Secretary of State asked for this based on, and he'd also been Attorney General, and he might have been Attorney General at the time now that I think about it, and asked that we fix our law so that it follows the Oklahoma model, which of course had been settled in the Supreme Court. And so that's where this came about. And we're not arguing that. We're just trying to make it easier to administer for the exact reasons I think that the good senator from Laramie County brought it up about disabled veterans. We could work on that one together too. So I hope you'll support the bill. It's pretty simple housekeeping. It's supported by our county treasurer. It's supported by folks at home. I appreciate the great work of the chairman of the Tribal Relations Committee on this, and hope you'll support the bill. Happy to answer any questions, but I ask your yes vote.
Questions, comments? Senator Hicks.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just a quick question. It looks to me like the way this is structured, and I'm just asking for clarification, that it puts an extra duty or notification requirement on the county clerk that on an annual basis, the way I read this, that the clerk will now have to send out a notice to tribal members advising that if they've changed residences off the reservation, that they need to come in and do the registration. Am I missing something, or is that an additional duty for the county clerk?
Other questions before I go to Senator Ellis? Got a couple out there. Senator Ellis, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To be clear, this information would likely be on that annual renewal card that the clerk sends out anyway. And if you'll recall, last year, we did have a similar requirement when folks are applying for certain military exemptions that they notify people, just because a lot of times we hear that folks are unaware that these exemptions exist. We've done this before in other contexts, putting that duty on the clerk. But yes, it would likely be just an additional printing on materials that are already going out. And I just want to rest the body's, if any concerns that right now under current Wyoming law, if you are making false statements on your vehicle registration, you can face a pretty hefty fine of up to $5,000, imprisonment for no more than 2 years or both. And so there is a pretty hefty hook and penalty associated with people that aren't accurate and honest when it comes to filing their registration fees. And certainly if a tribal member is living off reservation, they are subject to the laws of Wyoming. So I do think this has a very narrow application, and really it's one of government efficiency, and it really treats our tribal members similarly and the same as the rest of us. And to my colleague from Laramie County's point, I just want to emphasize that this bill did come out of tribal relations, so it did have that narrow focus. You know, I'm certain that our chairman of the Senate Transportation Committee has got a pen and pad and thinking about interim topics. So, you know, I think that this might provide a good model going forward for us to give how we do these registrations further consideration, but it certainly wouldn't be appropriate to do at this stage with this legislation.
Thank you, Chairman Ellis. Further questions? Question's been called. Okay. Sensing you're ready to vote. All those in favor of Senator Landon's motion that when the committee of the whole passes to report it, do so with a favorable recommendation that House Bill 25 do pass. All those in favor signify by holding your hand. All those opposed?
It's unanimous. Oh, sorry, there's one no.
Looks, I don't know, I don't think so. I got one or two no's.
2 no's, yes, 2 no's.
Thank you, Madam Chief. Okay, so House Bill 25 has passed the committee of the whole. Senator Driscoll.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the committee of the whole beg to leave, rise, and sit again.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye or holding a hand.
Mr. Chairman.
Whoop, sorry. Mr. President.
No. Go ahead.
Okay. All those.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Boner.
Oh, I'm sorry, Senator Boner. I apologize.
Do we do announcements now, or is that later?
They'll come out from the president.
Just a moment.
I heard 2 at once. Do we do announcements?
Go ahead, Mr. Chairman. Go ahead, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All those
in the call for beg leaves to rise, sit.
Take the vote.
All those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Mr. President.
Standing committee reports, but go ahead, Senator Case.
Mr. President, I'm just making it clear that we go to you and you're still in control of the Senate, and we will have announcements when you call for the noon recess.
Correct. We do have standing committee reports. Chief Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, February 2nd, 2021, your committee number 7, Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions, to whom was referred House Bill 13 engrossed alcoholic beverage regulation, respectfully report same back to the Senate with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendment. Voting aye, Senators Boner, Nethercott, and Scott. Conflict, Senators Case and Driscoll. Signed, Senator Driscoll, Chairman. Mr. President, your committee number 7, Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions, to whom was referred House Bill 15, Department of Transportation Communication Facilities, respectfully reports back to the Senate with the recommendation that it do pass. Voting ayes, Senators Boner, Case, Driscoll, Nethercott, and Scott. Signed, Senator Driscoll, Chairman. Mr. President, your committee number 7, Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions, to whom was referred House Bill 27, Business Code Revisions, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with the recommendation that it do pass. Voting aye, Senators Boner, Case, Driscoll, and Nethercott. No, Senator Scott. Signed, Senator Driscoll, Chairman.
Mr. Majority Floor Leader, that clears the desk.
Point of order.
Go ahead.
This is Chris. Before announcements, and perhaps this is what the majority leader was going to do, but before he makes a motion, I just wanted to make sure that re-referrals took place to the Appropriations Committee ahead of lunch, where those have to take place, and that might be what Senator Driscoll was going to do instead of the motion. I just wanted to make sure that we didn't move to adjourn before the re-referrals took place. My apologies if that's what he was doing.
Mr. President.
Mr. Floor Leader.
That is indeed what I was doing. I may not have them all. Mr. President, I would ask for House Bill 66 and House Bill 15 be re-referred to Committee Number 2 Appropriations, as they both have appropriations.
Mr. President, point of order, can we say the catch title? On a re-referral, I think you have to say somebody's got to say the catch title.
Thank you.
Please do, Mr. Floor Leader.
House Bill 66 is large projects, and House Bill 15 is YDOT communications. I've got to catch the title. 1 second. House Bill 15 for re-referral is Department of Transportation Communication Facilities. And House Bill 66 is 2121 large project funding. We'd like both of them re-referred to Committee Number 2 Appropriations. Thank you, Senator Case.
Mr. Floor Leader, when are you going to bring us back in?
2 o'clock.
Floor Leader moves the Senate recess until 2 p.m. Is that correct?
Need to do the re-referrals.
Oh, you did. You just did.
Without objection, is so ordered. You
Okay.
have to do it, Mr. President. So without objection is so ordered.
Without objection, so ordered. Okay. Mr. Floor Leader, Senate recess until 2 p.m.
Yes.
Announcements?
Mr. Chairman, point of order. We need or Mr. President, we need a motion on the.
Oh, calling for the re-referrals.
No,
Not the re-referrals, but for us to break for lunch, we need a motion from the majority leader.
He did
Mr.
make one.
I
Yeah,
made
we
the
did.
motion earlier.
It's been made.
Mr. Majority Floor
Senator
Leader,
Boner.
Mr. President, I move we stand
Wait,
recessed.
Senator Boner.
Sorry.
Thank you. Announcements.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your committee number 5, Agriculture, will meet, let's say, starting at 12:30, so in about 15 minutes, to hear the following bills: House Bill 44, Omnibus Water Bill Construction; House Bill 45, changes to water right, notice requirements for hearing; and House Bill 53, invasive plant species.
Further announcements, Senator Case.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Your committee number 3, Revenue, we're scheduled to meet 30 minutes after noon recess. I think that there's been enough discussion of recess. If we meet at 12:30, that'll be sufficient notice. And we will take up House Bill 30 at 12:30 on Groundhog Day, Public Utility Assessment. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Don't repeat any of the announcements on Groundhog Day. Senator Chairman Landon.
Mr. President, thank you. Just as a heads up, Mr. President, your Transportation Military Affairs Committee would possibly and probably will meet tomorrow upon adjournment. But some of that is contingent upon whether the president is to read in more bills after lunch. And I bet if the president read in Senate File 7, autonomous vehicles, Senate File 13, abandoned vehicles, towing service liens and titles, and Senate File 9, state employee moving expenses, those might be among the bills that we would take up tomorrow upon adjournment. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, part of our game plan to read those in. Chairman Baldwin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a quick early notice. Tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock, your committee number 10. We won't be perfect 10 today. We'll just be 10, part of the top 10. We'll meet at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, Wednesday, February 3rd, to hear Senate File 52, Insurance, Mental Health, and Substance Use Parity, and House Bill 4, Mental Health Professions Practice Act Amendments.
Further announcements? Chairman Perkins. Chairman Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. President. And Mr. President, like I said today, you're doing great. You and the majority floor leader have this dance down by the end of your term, a year from now. So,
Yeah, and I
just
already,
thank you,
I
you're
had the
doing
cheat,
fine.
I had a cheat sheet in front of me from the text from the chief clerk to get this right. We had somebody else throw something else in. All
Just-
right.
You just always keep telling yourself, read the script, read the script. It usually works out pretty good, pretty well. Anyway, Mr. Chairman, your committee number 2, appropriations, we try harder, will meet about 5 minutes after adjournment on the noon hour here to take up the re-referral of House Bill 15, which is Department of Transportation Communication Facilities, and also House Bill 66, which is the 2021 large projects funding. We'll take that up, see if we dispose those and still get appropriations people off in time to grab a bite to eat before we reconvene. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. President.
Thank you. Further announcements? There being none, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye.